Huskey. Stephanie Huskey is our Director of Schools. You would, Ms. Huskey, tell them a little bit about what your title means.
Okay, well, you all know that Mrs. Humble is your principal here, right? And so I am kind of like the principal for the entire Sevier County school system, okay? So I'm the big boss, I guess, is what people say. I've heard people say, kids say that a lot. And there are 33 schools in our system. Did you all realize that? So I'm over those 33 schools, plus all the cafeterias, all the maintenance department, all the school buses and school bus drivers, all of the people in my office that do all kinds of things, like they bring on new hires and do their paperwork. We have that kind of department. We have a payroll department that pays our teachers. I'm over them. We have a curriculum and instruction department that plans things and helps your teachers become better teachers. And so I'm over them. And so we actually have, and all substitutes, I forgot that. So we actually have about 2,600 employees. We used to be the largest employer in Sevier County, but Dollywood, with their new resort, has edged us out just a little bit. So we're the second largest employer in the county. And so I am over all things Sevier County schools.
So do you consider this we've talked about jobs versus careers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you consider this a job, or is this your career?
Oh, this is a 100% career. I began, let me say this. I'm a Sevier County resident, okay? I grew up in Pigeon Forge. Don't hold that against me. That's where my parents' house was, so that's where I had to be. I went to Pigeon Forge Elementary. At the time, Pigeon Forge High School was not there, so I went to Sevier County High, graduated from there, and came right back after college to Sevier County High School. I was an assistant girls basketball coach. I was a social studies teacher. I worked there for 27 years. In that time frame, I did, of course, the coaching and teaching. I was an assistant principal. I was an instructional coach, which is kind of like an assistant principal, but just deals with solely academics. And then I was principal for a little while. Then I made a transition to our central office, which is downtown in Sevierville, at the school system's office. I was director of personnel there, so I was over all people that are employees, and then I became director of schools. And so this is my 30th year in education, and so it's 100% a career. And I personally feel that I had a calling to do this. This is what I was supposed to do with my life, and have absolutely no regrets, and just it's been a joy. Now, not every day, I'll be honest, not every day and every second is a joy, but overall, it has absolutely been a joy.
So you kind of got into this, but
sorry.
How long have you been doing this kind of work?
Okay, well, so this is my 30th year. When I was a high school teacher, I taught U.S. history, civics, which is kind of like government. I taught world geography. I taught sociology. I taught history of Sevier County. I sponsored all kinds of clubs, Beta Club. We had, I'm trying to think of what else. I can't even think of all the clubs that I worked with there. And then of course I coached. So I've been in it a long time. It's kind of odd to come back to the high school that you graduated from, because lots of those teachers were there, and they really helped me when I was a teacher, a young teacher. But then when I became an assistant principal, I was kind of the boss of some of those teachers that I had as a student. And so that was kind of interesting. So
we might talk about that later.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy most about your job as director?
Oh, goodness. I feel like, director of schools I'm in a place that I feel like I can really make a difference. And so I enjoy coming out to schools once a week. I try to get away from my office because a lot of it is desk work, okay, and on the phone all the time. But I try to get out of my office and get into schools and talk to kids, talk to teachers, talk to as many people as I can to say, what can we do to improve Sevier County schools? Okay, anything that anybody wants to suggest. And so then I'm in a position where I feel like I can go back, take what you all say, and really try to make a difference with kids. So that's my favorite part.
How did you decide on this career path? I know you probably didn't think about being a director of schools when you were studying to be a teacher.
No.
Talk about this career path for you.
No, and actually, I majored in history. And so, is there anybody that loves history in here? Okay, good. You're my people. You're my people. So, I majored in history, thinking that I was going to go to law school, okay, at first. And then, actually, I had an opportunity to work while I was in college at the Great Smoky Mountains National Park as a park ranger. And as part of that, I actually did little programs and things for visitors. And that's where I started enjoying interacting with people, telling them about, the park. And so I switched, which wasn't really hard to switch. I stayed with history, but I added the classes that I needed to get an endorsement for teaching. I've always liked people. And so that's very important. If you're thinking about becoming a teacher, you have to love people. You have to love kids. And so that was a change that I made, just a slight change, but it worked out great.
Guys, if you remember, we did those personality tests in the earlier 6 weeks we were in here, and one of the parts of that was social, being social. If you're a teacher and you don't have a little bit of social, it's going to be tough.
It's hard.
What skills or education are important for success in your field?
Okay, well, just like we said, you have to be a people person, and in that you have to have great communication skills. You have to develop relationships with people, and sometimes, and you all know this just from being in school, sometimes it's hard to like people or talk to people, or when things, maybe you disagree with what someone's done. You have to be ready to have kind of tough conversations, but in a good way. You need to be organized in education, and you also need to have a love for your subject area and be willing to kind of study. Just because you come through college, just because I came through and have a degree in history, by no means do I know every single thing about history. So you have to commit yourself to learning all the time. And especially, to prepare yourselves for your students, but also if your students inspire you and say, hey, what about this? Can I ask a question, about a particular subject? Then you need to be willing to go and learn about it so you can bring it back to everybody.
So obviously to be a teacher, you have to go have some college. Where did you go to college?
I went to Maryville College, which is small, over in Blount County to begin with. And what's interesting there, I told you I was majoring in history, and Maryville is so small. They had one history teacher, okay, that taught everything. And she was quite elderly, and she passed away at the end of my sophomore year. And they were doing a nationwide search for another history professor, and here I am waiting, to take the classes. So I transferred to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville for my junior and senior year and finished there. And then I actually stayed at UT and did a student teaching program for 1 year, a whole solid year. Normally student teaching is around 6 weeks, and sometimes it's a semester depending on what school you're at, but UT at the time had you do student teaching for an entire year in a classroom, and then I was able to take a few more classes and get a master's degree, and left with a master's degree when I got my job.
We've been talking about education and training the last couple of days. We just happened to be on that part of our curriculum. And I showed them the Sevier County salary schedule for teachers and how it's based on not just how long you've been teaching, but what level of education you've achieved.
Right.
How far did you go in?
Right. As I told you, I started out with a master's. So I had at the time, it was about a $5,000 bump, from just a bachelor's degree, a 4-year degree. But I went and got an EDS, an educational specialist degree. And so I did not go on and get a doctorate degree. You can have, we pay for people who have the highest level of that degree, and that's either a doctor of philosophy, a PhD, you've probably heard of that, or an educational doctorate, an EDD. So either one of those degrees is the highest degree that we pay on, but I do not have that. My job does not require that. It probably will sometime in the future, but as of right now, it does not.
What's a challenge or obstacle you've had to overcome in your career?
Believe it or not, I was painfully shy. I was an introvert. I literally shook if I had to stand up in class in front of people and give a speech or do some kind of report. And so obviously with a teacher, you don't have a choice. With that, you have got to have confidence and be able to speak with people. And so that was the biggest challenge that I had coming in.
Something I wanted to ask you about, it's not on the question, but it's related to this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you the first female director of schools in Sevier County?
I'm actually not. I am in the modern era, but there was Mrs. Temple, a lady in the past. It was in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and she was in my position for just a year or so. Now, I don't know the circumstances. We've kind of asked, and nobody seems to know, but that was absolutely unheard of in this, in any era, really, at that time. So, but in the modern era, yes, I am. So
we were probably a much, much smaller district.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Seymour, I would guess at that time, most people were going to Harrison Chilhowie.
I would say so. Yeah.
Which isn't a Sevier County school.
Yeah.
How has that been for you? Have you had any difficulty with that, do you think?
Oh, well, that's a great question, and I was concerned a little bit about that because I think our society as a whole sees women as capable of doing jobs, and that's becoming better and better. But Sevier County is kind of a very traditional place also, and I had a little bit of a concern, but I will tell you, as soon as the people that I've had to interact with realize that I just love kids, and I want the very best for our kids. They don't care if you're man, woman, makes no difference. They just want somebody that's good, so.
What advice would you give to someone who's considering a career like yours? You can start with teacher and then talk about more an administrative role.
Well, teachers, right now, teaching is wide open. We need teachers desperately. Just to make sure that there's all kinds of levels of certifications. You have to have a license to become a teacher, and the college that you go to will recommend you for that license based on how well you perform, there with their classes and such. So you can get a license to teach very little kids, pre-K through 3rd, or you can get a license for kindergarten through 5th grade, or you can get a license for 6th through 12. And those 6th through 12 licenses normally are in a content area, like math or science or English, or something else. So there's a couple of other, we call them endorsements, but there's a couple of other endorsements. There's, for example, a math that's just middle school math. If you just really want to work with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade kids and teach math, and you can get that as well. So there's a whole bunch of those. There is endorsements in special education. And there's that's working with our students that have special needs, you know, from the very, very severe to just a slight learning disability, or maybe a hearing problem or a speech problem. So there's PE, you know, and that is a K through 12 endorsement. So if you get that endorsement, you can teach, you know, PE in any school at any level. There's also, in the high school level, a career technical endorsement that you can get. And that's if say you are a cosmetologist, hairstylist, and you decide that you don't really want to run a salon or do that full time anymore, there is a pathway that you can actually use your experience and come into a high school and teach kids cosmetology. Same thing with a welder, same thing with many of the trades. And you don't have to go to college as long. You do have to go to college, but we're looking for all kinds of people. So not just the traditional math, English, science, social studies, you know, that you're thinking about.
We kind of blew through our questions.
Yeah, okay.
We went through
Yeah.
this really quickly.
Yeah.
I didn't ask as many follow-ups as normal. So this is a time where we can have some student question and answers. I know you guys probably have some questions. It's whether or not you're brave enough to ask them. Remember, are your questions respectful and relevant? So anybody, what's a question somebody would like to ask? Hayden, you were talking about something with her before we ever got started. Maybe we could go into that a little bit. Tell everybody what you asked her.
About snow, canceling school.
Oh yeah. How much snow or flooding do we need to get school?
Okay, so he said, you know, how much snow or flooding do we need to get school canceled? And so just so you'll know, that's one of my jobs, is I'm the person that makes that decision. I'm not the person that you hear, you know, when your family gets the call at home, you know, I'm not the voice that you hear. And now, you know, we have the apps and it pops up on your apps and that sort of thing. So there's really not a great answer. I know you all would like to know that it is, you know, 3.25 inches and we will be out, but that is not how it works. I am talking all the time to the National Weather Service in Morristown. I'm talking to our emergency management services all the time. I'm talking to the county road crew all the time. And then I'm talking to our own bus drivers because they know what the routes are, you know. And so it's a lot of calling on my part. My phone is going off all the time. And so if there is a significant amount of the county that we feel like is just unsafe for kids, then we call school, you know, or I call school. And I want to tell you this, I am not of an attitude that I don't want to call school off. Obviously, I want you to be safe, but I think it's kind of nice, like the snow that we just had, for you to have a snow day. That's part of being a kid. I remember having them. They were fun. And so I don't want you to think that I'm up there going, I don't want them to have a snow day. You know, I don't want to, everybody has to be in school. Of course, we want you in school as much as possible, but also it's okay, you know, if we have to be out.
Those calls that you make,
Mm-hmm.
not the call itself,
Yeah.
the call if
Yeah.
you're going to be out or not, can sometimes be controversial.
Yes.
Especially like this last snow.
Mm-hmm.
We got more snow, us in Kodak, we got more snow than almost anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time it's up in Gatlinburg.
Yes.
What was that like for you? I know I drove through Sevierville and it was like, did it snow at all?
Yes. And that's always, you know, normally if you've lived here a long time, most people sort of understand that the Gatlinburg roads, you know, they're just very steep and places that don't ever see sunlight, hardly. They're just so shady, and so it just takes a long time for it to thaw. But just as Mr. Davis said, this last time it was absolutely the opposite. And so what's interesting on those days too is there's always basketball involved. There's basketball games that are scheduled, or coaches want to have practice, and so there's a whole lot of that calling. And I mean, sometimes there's coaches from other parts of the county saying, I don't even have anything at my house. My kids can get out. But that's just tough. That's just very, very tough. So yes. Yes, there is. That's a great question. We actually build in 30 extra minutes to the school day than what's required by the state of Tennessee. So every day you go 30 more minutes than really you should have to. But the benefit of that is we have 13 days that we can call school off. That builds in 13 days, and we don't have to make it up. When I was a student, a long time ago in Sevier County schools, we didn't have that. Winter was significantly different. It was quite a bit more. We had several days out of school. We also didn't have the ability to treat the roads like we do now, and I had to go on Saturday to school. And we actually would extend the school year some. And so I remember going in well into June, like the first week of June, plus having to go on Saturday. So now we don't have to do that. So.
Anybody else thought of a question while we were listening? Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
That's a great question. Do I regret it? No, I don't. What's been one of the greatest blessings is to be able to see students that I had. Remember, now I've been in this 30 years. And so I see students that I have now, and they're successful, and they've, a lot of them have kids of their own. They're working. I go to some of my own students for things like to get my hair cut, go to the doctor, the dentist, and so that's such a blessing for me to see that we've actually helped, somebody decide what they wanted to do and had just a tiny part in their life for a very short amount of time. So.
Chase, go ahead. Oh, sorry, I thought you were Chase. You go ahead.
If you could change or make any rule, what would it be?
Wow. Okay. Change or make any rule. Well, our money and how much money we get to put in to schools comes from largely the state. They determine everything. I will say that. They determine the law of how much money could go into the schools for salaries, technology, buildings, anything you can think of. And I would really like to see education funded more, and especially teachers' salaries needs to come up lots higher than what they are. And we're in the process of trying to do that. But we always need more money to do more things. So.
Go ahead, Amy.
You ever wanted to cancel a day of school? Just cancel it?
Well, no. I can tell you, those days, I know you all are so excited, and you're waiting by the phone, and you're waiting to see, on social media, who's got the call and all that. For me, they're awful days, unless we get just a snowstorm that's just massive like we had, and then that's an easy decision. But in the mornings when there's some kind of worry, or not, I can tell you that on, I believe it was Wednesday of this week. Y'all remember the big storm we had that rolled through about 1:30? I spent most of my morning on the phone with the National Weather Service in Morristown and our EMS, just looking to see, should we dismiss early? Because we don't want 70-mile-an-hour winds and kids on a school bus to be turned out, right when all that's coming down. And so luckily the timing worked out, maybe not for you all, but for me, for sure, the timing worked out that it passed us, and then we were able to just have regular dismissal. So.
because those cancellations are kind of a popular topic with kids especially.
Yeah.
There are things that you guys don't ever think about, and honestly, I never thought about as an adult until I became a teacher, that might make people not want to cancel school.
Yes.
Talk about that for a second.
Okay. Well, there, first of all, and unfortunately, this happens sometimes, and you all may know some folks that this happens too, but if you're not in school, sometimes students are not in a warm place. They're not able to get meals, hot meals, or they're in a situation maybe at home that's not the absolute best, and school is the best place, and they get to come and see their friends and that sort of thing. And so, especially when we have extended days, and we have, I'll just tell you that last snowstorm that we had, I really hoped, do y'all remember we didn't go on the Monday? We went, we were out on Martin Luther King Day. Then we were out Tuesday through Friday of that week. And I really thought, well, we're going to go back to school Monday. We need to go back to school. And we couldn't. It was just we were just not able to do that. And so over that time, that really concerns me about kids who might be in situations that are not great.
Yeah. Also, parents work.
That's correct. Yes.
And a lot of parents don't like to leave their kid at home alone or find them place. I've not had to deal with that because I'm a teacher now. But before I became a teacher, this is only my third year teaching, guys. I would just take a day off from work, and I was the boss, so I could work kind of virtually and work from home. But a lot of people don't have that kind of flexibility.
And I will tell you all this, and this is something when I became superintendent that I really wanted. If I can make the decision at all by the 6 o'clock news the night before, I'm going to make the decision. Now, sometimes weather can't it's not going to come in till that morning, and we just really don't know, But I just think by the 6 o'clock news, and I know there's not many people probably because of the world that we're in now with technology. I don't know that people used to, watch the 6 o'clock news so much, but that's just kind of a traditional landmark that we have, that everybody knows kind of what's going on with the day on the 6 o'clock news. So I just feel like that's a nice, courteous thing to do for parents and kids too, to let you know as soon as we possibly can. But that's not always the case. So. Honestly, sometimes it's, if we have, especially in flooding, we don't want buses out before they can see, in the dark running, and a roadway may be flooded. Sometimes we hope that maybe a road that's been kind of icy gets melted, by that time. And then sometimes we're just not sure what the weather's going to do. So sometimes we delay it for 2 hours just to see, is this system coming in or not? Because you all know it's tricky here. Sometimes they tell us we're really going to have snow, and then we're all disappointed we don't have any, so.
That was actually a good question. I'd never thought about not seeing the flooding.
I'm sorry, say it one more time. I do control in-service days. I do. We have to set them as part of our calendar. And so we have to make a decision on how many in-service days and when. A lot of times, we are having, like, for example, next Tuesday, we're having an election. And some of our schools are used as a place where people come in and vote, during the election. So that's a good day that we can say, this is an in-service day. So lots of times you'll see them tied in with election days, just so we don't want all kinds of people in and out of the school while we're trying to teach kids, so.
Got the boss of all the schools. This is opportune time. If you have a question, why do we do this way? Why do we do it? It's a good person to ask. Hey.
Wait, so do in-service days count as a day of school?
Not for you, but teachers have to serve so many in-service days a year, but not for you. So, Yes.
Jason? Go ahead.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know the exact dollar amount. I can get that for you and send it back. We did have some grant money that we got from the federal government to help provide that, but they're expensive. I'll tell you that. But they're pretty cool, aren't they? Yeah. So yes.
Why is it that some schools get canceled and then others that have perfect weather get canceled?
Because we're a system, we're a school system, and we all belong as one. That's a great question. So why, when it snows in Gatlinburg, why couldn't they just be canceled and you still come to school, right? That's what you're asking. Because we are one entire system, and we're not zoned in Sevier County. Other counties have zoning. That means, they draw lines on a map, and depending on where you live, you have to go to that school in that zone. We don't here. Buses obviously just run in certain zones. We call them transportation zones, but anybody is free to go to any school that they so choose if they can get there. And so we have lots of people that are driving from different areas of the county that attend different schools. And so that's another reason why we just call it all as one. The one time that maybe that wouldn't be the case is, say we have a pipe burst in a school and it floods a hallway. Then we would just say just that school, because that's not a travel hazard or anything like that. So, yeah.
Are private schools in your school system?
No, that's a great question. It's just public. I'm just over the public schools. So the King's Academy that's just down the road here is their own separate entity from Sevier County Schools. So I don't have anything to do with them.
Something that I had thought of, and now I'm going to have to rethink for a second. Oh yeah, you've had a lot of different jobs in the school system. Excluding your current job, I don't want to put you too much on the spot.
Yeah.
Which of those previous jobs that you had was your favorite?
My very favorite job, and I love the job that I'm in right now, but I can tell you when I retire and decide to go home, my very, very favorite job would be principal. Just because I had the freedom to get out and see all kinds of different kids in all kinds of different settings and interact with all kinds of teachers. And when I was principal, I did not do the discipline unless it was the really, really bad discipline. So I wasn't dealing with lots of problems all the time. One of my jobs when I was assistant principal is I was the heavy disciplinarian. I was the person that you came to that you got in school or ALC or even expelled. And so that I did not love and enjoy, although it's necessary. But as principal, I just really got to focus on lots of good things that were going on, a lot of academics and all kinds of extracurriculars as well. All kinds of things. There's zero tolerance offenses that the state of Tennessee, mostly weapons and drugs, are the two largest categories, and we don't want to go there. We don't, safety, I will say that since you kind of brought that up, safety is on my mind every single day. Every day. And I want it to be on my mind so it's not on yours. So you don't have to feel scared to come to school or worried to come to school, but literally every single morning when I get up, we transport somewhere around 9,500 kids a day on school buses. And so you can imagine with 33 schools, and that's a large county, they're going all over the place. And that is on my mind every single morning when I wake up, is I hope those buses, everything goes well. And then once everybody gets to school or as they're coming into school, it crosses my mind many times during the day. So we have constant conversations about how we can make you all safer at school.
What are like 2 or 3 things challenges that you're facing as a district right now that are always on your plate? You're always trying to find ways to deal with these issues.
Teacher shortage is one. And, you know, I did not even discuss, I just remembered, I didn't tell you about becoming an administrator when I talked earlier about being a teacher. And so we do have plans in place and schools around the area that you can, once you're a teacher, and most of them require you to be a teacher for so long. Usually it's around 3 years or so, you know, but that's kind of going away, that you can go get an additional degree. That's in administration and supervision or instructional leadership. That's another title that they call it now. And so you have to have that certification, okay, that degree. You have to pass a massive test to be able to become certified to be a teacher, or I'm sorry, an administrator in our school system. And so I did that as well. But that's one of the challenges. Number one, to find teachers, and then number two, to find capable people that really want to be in administration, because you leave the classroom and you have, you know, you kind of have a little bit of idea of what's going to happen in your classroom each day. You have a plan, just like Mr. Davis had a plan today. He sort of knew what was, you know, kind of going to happen. In administration, you don't always have that plan. Or you might have a plan, but all kinds of things happen, and then you have to take care of those, and you can't get done what you really wanted to get done. So trying to find teachers and administrators is one of the challenges we talk about all the time. Also, second one is the growth in our area and trying to keep up with, you know, buildings and making sure that we've got enough room for kids. We're also trying to keep up with technology. Safety's kind of rolled into that as well. And so that's almost a daily conversation with me.
Go ahead.
As far as a student, yes, there's truancy law. Yes. And it's 5 unexcused is where you start the process. Well, really the process starts earlier than that, but you can be taken to court if you have 5 unexcused absences. And so yes, we want you here, because you can't learn anything if you're at home. Well, we have a board policy that says you have to get that note in within 2 days. And so if you forget the first day, we'll give you a break on that, but you need to bring it the next. So.
All right. And so, what do we say to our guest speaker?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Well, I'm hoping that we've got a future director of schools sitting right here, future teachers, future principals, future coaches.